This week, I'm continuing my research on the Overland Trails, but focusing primarily on the Donner Party. I've chosen this specific topic because I lived in Reno, Nevada, and traveled through the Sierra Nevada mountains through Donner Pass to Sacramento on several occasions. Donner Pass was named after the Donner Party because that location is where their tragedy occurred. Let me give you a little background information. In the winter of 1846 to 1847, nearly half a group of immigrants traveling overland on their way west to California perished after being trapped by snow in the high elevations of the Sierra Nevada mountains. I have experienced this area in the dead of winter. There is a lot of snow and is extremely treacherous. The survivors lived by eating the boiled hides of their oxen, their pet dogs, wild mice, and anything else edible. Finally, they cannibalized their dead. Written accounts of their ordeal appeared shortly afterward, and the tragedy became one of the best-known sagas of the 19th century American West. The first source that I found this week was a book by Donald L. Hardesty titled The Archaeology of the Donner Party. Mr. Hardesty lays out the background of the Donner Party and why they took the route they did. He also includes a roster of the Donner Party, including the individuals' names, ages, and if they died in the mountains. The youngest victim was 1 year old, and the oldest was 65 years old. Out of around roughly 89 individuals that I counted in his book, 40 of them died in the mountains. Eyewitness accounts of the ordeal are not abundant. The best known account is the diary by a gentleman named Patrick Bren. He was a member of the Donner Party at the mountain camps between November 20th, 1846 to March 1st, 1847, when he was rescued. Him, his wife, and their 7 kids all miraculously survived the tragedy, the ordeal. My second source is Desperate Passage, the Donner Party's Perilous Journey West by Ethan Rarick. Mr. Rarick used letters, diaries, and documents from 4 Western collections with recent studies in archaeology, climatology, and physiology to offer new insights and fill in the gaps of earlier narratives. My last source, Fortunate Emigrants by Kristen Johnson, includes several stories from people who either were part of the Donner Party, knew people who were part of the Donner Party, or had known the Donner family themselves prior to the splitting off and when these other families had headed on the Oregon Trail. Included was a statement from a lady named Edna Mabel Sherwood. Her grandmother, Lovina Graves, was 12 years old and part of the Donner Party with her parents and her other siblings. Edna tells a story that was told to her by her grandma, detailing why the Donner Party ended up taking the route that they took. I'm going to go ahead and read that to you. In her statement, she had said, her grandma told her, quote, "The principal reason the Donner Party had such a hard time was because they were taking a new road that had never been used, and they had to cut trees and clear it. Many bridges had to be built. All this, of course, took time. They were delayed for months in making the road. 1 entire week was spent in camp, the men going ahead building the road and bridges, then returning to the camp at night." I could not imagine being a member of that party, having to experience what these people experienced, having little children, not being able to feed them, watching them starve and die from not having food, or even dying from the cold, not having shelter. This is definitely one story that I've always thought about, especially when I did live in Reno. I've seen Donner Lake, which is near the campsite they had. Like I said, I've been on Donner Pass. It is a remarkable story of people who all they wanted to do was just to survive so they could provide a better life for their family. And unfortunately, they made a lot of bad decisions, and it took a lot of people's lives. Thank you. God bless.